Dobro večer, poštovani gledaoci. U večerašnjem izdanju emisije Globus razgovaramo sa posebnim gostom, to je direktor predsjedničke administracije OEBS-a, gospodin Roberto Montella. Mr. Montella or Signore Montella, welcome and thank you for taking this interview.
Thank you very much for having me in your show.
Firstly, I would like to talk about your present duty, and this is the Director of Presidential Administration. What does the Director do at the OSCE?
Well, we have an elected president in the Parliamentary Assembly. The president elected in Baku in 2013 and re-elected last year in Helsinki. He represents 323 parliamentarians who are part of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. These are parliamentarians who come in their national delegations, in their national capacity. And the president represents them all, and he represents, in theory, also 1 billion citizens, because the 57 participating states of the OSCE are around, 1 billion citizens from Vancouver to Vladivostok. The director of the presidential administration advises the president, directs his office, follows him in meetings, follows him in delicate discussions and negotiations with the leaders in the OSCE participating states, in particular in areas where there is conflict, and works very closely with him and coordinates his office, coordinates also the office in his capital, because the Parliamentary Assembly, of course, doesn't have one fixed place. Normally the president now is in Finland, so my job is also to coordinate with the Parliament of Finland his schedule and his programs.
But you have been traveling around the Europe as well
quite
as
extensively,
in quite extensively, as well as in Asia. What was your main duty while traveling to Ukraine, for instance?
Well, thank you for the question, because Ukraine is actually one of the latest trips that we had 2 weeks ago. We went to Ukraine to see, of course, in Kiev, the leadership in Kiev. We met with the foreign minister. We met with the OSCE parliamentary delegation, with the speaker of the Ukrainian parliament. But the main goal was to go directly on the field and see in the Donbas area and in Donetsk Oblast, to see on the field what is the situation on the ground. And I think this is a very clever thing to do, because normally we always have the first impression from the leadership in capitals, but it's always good to go on the train and see from ordinary citizens.
And what is the situation right now in Ukraine? I mean, it's a tough question, but it was also one of the main questions in this ministerial conference that was held in Belgrade 2 weeks ago.
Correct. Well, I am not somebody who gets easily impressed, because probably we'll get there, but in the past I've worked in difficult areas and in conflict zones, so I have seen situations which are quite difficult. But I was impressed by the difficult and dire living conditions of the people in Kramatorsk, in the Donetsk area in general. They are under, very difficult personal conditions. People who live in shelters, people whose life are a bit shattered. We had a very interesting meeting with the young students from the area on the side of the contact line, who are very much willing to return home. It's very strange. Sometimes you meet young people whose biggest desire is to maybe move to Europe or to open up and to go outside of Ukraine, while these students were university students whose only desire was to be able to go back in the area where there is a conflict now and to be able to go to school. And so this was very touchy, as well as seeing, of course, collective centers where IDPs are living. And it's it's a very good exercise, especially for the OSCE PA president, because then the week later he addressed the OSCE Permanent Council in Vienna, where he could speak to the OSCE ambassadors who are representing the 57 governments of the OSCE, and he could relate also directly his impressions, and it's important, because this also is the message that was then reflected in his ministerial meeting yesterday in Belgrade.
You have mentioned now the conflict zones that you were there. You have a vast experience in that matter. You have been serving for 10 years to the OSCE missions in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then in Kosovo, in Serbia, and in Montenegro. So what was your impression when you came to the Balkans for the first time?
Well, my first experience in the Balkans was in Sarajevo in '99.
You were there from January
from
until
January
October?
To October 99. I was in Sarajevo at the beginning, but mainly I was deployed in Livno, in south part of Bosnia, and in an area where there is a majority of Croatian people living. And then I was moved to the Republika Srpska in Doboj. I was actually in Doboj while the bombing was taking place here in Belgrade after the 23rd of March 99. And I was covering Doboj and Zenica in that period. Well, the impression in Bosnia was quite strong. You know, like it was for me the first time. It was my first time in former Yugoslavia, and the first time in a conflict area after living in Milano and Copenhagen, in very comfortable,
very peaceful areas.
And,
yes.
But I have, tried to very much empathize with also the people who worked very closely with me and try to learn from their own personal histories. And you get to know a lot of things, you know, from the people who work very closely with you, the driver, the interpreter, your colleagues. In Bosnia, my main task was being responsible for the organization of elections in these three areas, Zenica, Doboj, and Livno. And at that time, the OSCE was actually the organization that organized the elections. Normally, you've heard about the OSCE, the ODIHR, the Parliamentary Assembly, as institutions that monitor the elections that are run by a government. In that case, immediately after the conflict, the OSCE was actually asked to be the main organizer, you know, like to function as a central election commission and then a local election commission. So my task was similar to the task of a local election commission, trying to organize in all the municipalities in Doboj, Zenica and Livno the elections, and relating with the local politicians and the local administrations in trying to establish polling station committees.
So you gained some experience about the Balkan mentality and so on, but I guess that you had no idea what was coming up in the October of 99 when you went to Kosovo. So tell us more about what you have encountered there.
When I was in Bosnia and when June 99 came and the conflict was over, many of the people who were deployed in Bosnia were asked whether they were ready to go to Kosovo, because Kosovo was building up a very big mission with the OSCE and they needed personnel who had some experience in conflict areas. So I volunteered to go to Pristina, and from Pristina I was then transferred to Mitrovica and Vučtern. This was mainly the area where I operated. That situation was very challenging because immediately after the war, the Kumanovo Technical Agreement of 99 foresee that all the central authorities of Yugoslavia at that time, the army, the courts, the police, had to be relocated into what we call Serbia proper. So there was a vacuum of power somehow in Kosovo at that time, which was filled in by KFOR, by the UNMIK, and by the OSCE. We were in a situation where there was a vacuum of power that was filled in by, in each of the 30 municipalities of Kosovo, you had a UN regional administrator under the leadership of Bernard Kouchner in Pristina. And these UNMIK regional administrators, municipal administrators, were the ones, let's say, who were having the function of somehow mayor, if you want to call it, or governor of that city. So that task was that of restarting the life in Kosovo and, starting to organize the public services, the public utilities, but also to engage with the political actors that were there. And one of my tasks as OSCE democratization officer in Kosovo was mainly to help the UNMIK in implementing what was a UNMIK resolution that foresaw the change of power from the so-called self-appointed mayors, because immediately after the Yugoslav forces left Kosovo, most of those who were fighting, the UCK, took power in these municipalities, and they, for a period from June 99 to 15th of December 99, they had established the so-called self-appointed mayors. There were mayors, former commander of the UCK in different regions, who somehow wanted to function as mayors, self-appointed mayors, responding to the Tachi authorities at that time. And so our task as OSCE in implementing this UNMIK resolution was to try to engage with the politicians, the self-appointed mayors, yes, and try to transfer this power to the UNMIK legitimate authorities, and also to engage with other political actors. And this was the main task, and then leading this to the municipal elections in Kosovo. The first municipal elections were on the 28th of October 2000. And so our task was to work with political parties, prepare them for their first, let's say, first democratic and multi-party elections that they had in Kosovo.
You have also had a big and very difficult task to reconciliate actually both sides that were engaged in the war during the 99 in Kosovo. So you had to be contacting the Serbian government, the Kosovo politicians. So how did you manage to do that?
I did a lot of that when I went in southern Serbia. Probably we will get to that. But also in Kosovo for a while there was a lot of trying to reconciliate the few Serbs that were left in the some enclaves in Prilužje. In my area there was Prilužje, where there was an enclave with 5,000 Serbs. So that was the main task, was to guarantee that the few Serbs that were still in Albanian majority areas could get access to newspaper, to food, could get safe transport to Mitrovica, which was the area where they would feel safer. So the negotiations there were mainly at that level,
I'm more interested in some specific stories about the problems that you have encountered there. Whom did you talk to? I know that you met with Commander Guri and with Colonel Sreten Lukic and so on and so on. So tell us something about that cooperation.
Okay, this was in November 2001. I moved from Kosovo to Serbia, to Belgrade, but my responsibility was establishing the office in southern Serbia. The OSCE was somehow tasked to in a mediating role between the conflicting side in southern Serbia. There was for a period a group of citizens of Bujanovac, Preševo and Medveđa that established the so-called UCPMB.
That was actually the loophole that Mr. Montgomery also acknowledged, that it happened during preparing that document.
Yes, because, after the Kumanovo technical agreement, there was the establishment of a ground safety zone between Kosovo and Serbia proper. And in this ground safety zone, the main point of the ground safety zone was not to permit the Yugoslav authorities to enter, to create a kind of a buffer zone between Kosovo and Serbia. And in that ground safety zone, it was, let's say, the area where this group, the UCPMB, developed its activities and started a conflict with the Serbian authorities.
Because they entered and they hold those positions.
Yes, they held those positions. I mean, the idea was to create this group that would fight the Serbian authorities in order to of course, defend the Albanians who lived in Preševo, Bujanovac and Medveđa. It's an area of 100,000 people where the 60% of the population at the time was Albanian. Probably it's the same now. So this population of Albanians felt very much in danger the moment after the Kumanovo technical agreement, most of the Yugoslav forces were redeployed in Serbia proper, but some of them were redeployed in southern Serbia, where there was an Albanian majority population. So you could imagine the frustration of those Yugoslav officers who were in Kosovo, somehow feeling upset because they had to leave Kosovo, but being redeployed in southern Serbia where there is an Albanian majority population. So this created a period of conflict in that area, which fortunately ended with the Končul agreement brokered by NATO, and the main point of the OSCE being there, and the main point of my going there to Bujanovac and establishing an office was to implement three main projects. The first project was to create a multi-ethnic component of the Serbian police. The Albanians would have felt much more secure if Serbian citizens of Albanian ethnic background could enter into the police, and this would have given them the possibility to patrol the streets in Preševo, Bujanovac and Medveđa and create some confidence-building measures with the local population. Another project that we wanted to develop was multi-ethnic stations in Preševo and Bujanovac. For 50 years, mainly there was a municipal radio which was mainly Serbian, although the majority of the population there was of ethnic Albanian background. So we helped first establish an Albanian desk and a Serbian desk, news in the radio Bujanovac and Preševo, but also we helped working with young journalists because they were probably not yet young journalists ready to take on those responsibilities. So we had a training component, but also kind of help the local administration develop these
But during those processes, you had some very tense situations.
We have lots of tense situations because the biggest problem we had was to change the election law. In Preševo, Bujanovac and Medveđa, especially in Bujanovac, for many years there was always a Serbian administration, and this was due to the fact that the electoral system was established in a way that it was the electoral system called first past the post, the similar one that they have in England, where the first party that obtains most votes gets a municipal councillor. What happened with this system is that if you have electoral units, izborne jedinice, which are the American technical word for it is gerrymandered. If you have 100 citizens of a village which return one municipal councillor, and then you have another village of 100 citizens returning another municipal council, but then you have a village of 10,000 returning one municipal council, you will soon understand that you have, a majority in the municipal council that doesn't reflect the population. So the recommendation from the OSCE was that, in an area where there is different ethnicities and different groups, it's better to introduce a proportional representation system. We managed, with the help of Dr. Čović, with the help of Rasim Ljajić, who was the deputy of the coordination body, to pass in the Serbian parliament a new law for local elections, for local self-government, and Preševo, Bujanovac, Medveđa in July 2002 were the first municipalities that implemented this, and those were challenging elections, let's say, because for the first time, at least in Bujanovac, there was a change of power, from a purely Serbian administration to an Albanian administration. One of the things that I insisted at the time, with, of course, the help of Ambassador Montgomery and other embassies who were very much involved in the process, was to ensure that it would be a multi-ethnic administration. So, although the Albanians had the majority could have run the municipality, but we said we need to have an Albanian mayor, but we need to have a Serbian deputy, and so on, so that it will be a multi-ethnic governance, and this would create more confidence in the citizens. I think this was
after that, yes, it was quite successful. But after that, you have moved to Belgrade, to Serbia, and here, actually, you have contributed to some processes, especially with the law, introducing new laws or policies into our government. It was after 2000. So, what are you most content with that you have helped to be introduced?
I moved to Belgrade to help the heads of missions of the OSCE. The main task of the OSCE at the time, I think it still is today, was to mainly focus on 4 portfolios. Law enforcement, try to reform the police in Serbia. Rule of law, work very much with the courts and the judiciary in trying to reform the judiciary. Media. We were the ones behind these so famous Radio Broadcasting Council. At that time, there was still an issue about the national frequencies, and that's when we worked and were very much involved into the establishment, first of the Radio Broadcasting Council, and then in supervising how the frequencies, the national frequencies, were distributed. Then we, of course, worked very much on the sort of a democratization process, working with the parliament and trying to introduce systems of internal and external oversight in the army and in the police. So The main activities that we did in Belgrade were police, judiciary, media, for a while environment, and with international experts coming from abroad who had great expertise on how you introduce reforms in a post-conflict environment. It's not easy. It's not easy to reform a police which maybe has been for years involved in difficult times, and enter and introduce new ideas on how you reform the police. There is not a blueprint on how you reform, you introduce the reform. There are places we've seen, for example, in Iraq, after the conflict in Iraq, the principle was total lustration. The new authorities said, we get rid of all the army, we get rid of the police, and we establish a new system. But we've seen that this didn't produce, was not very so fortunate in Iraq. So I think in Serbia we used a lot of common sense, and we said we work with the existing forces, but introducing gradual concepts of reform, internal oversight, with the introduction of an inspector general in the police, and external oversight, having the Minister of Interior coming to the parliament to report to the parliament. So,
from this point of view, now you are living in Vienna doing something else, but you still have news from Serbia. How do you see Serbia these days? Are you satisfied with all those conditions?
This is a very dangerous question, because I'm sure this is the one who's going to get the most attention. I'm sure they're not very interested on my own personal experience, but on this. So I'll try to be extremely politically correct. For me, it's a great sense of pride to come back to Serbia now and seeing. During my time, Serbia was mainly a consumer, let's say, of the international community's product. Conflict prevention, conflict resolutions, reform. We were there as the ones who would tell Serbia, you need to do this, you need to do that, to improve and to help
them on the way
help
of
you on the way to
society.
EU integration. To come back to Serbia in an occasion where Serbia is the president, is my boss, let's say, is the president of the OSCE, and is the country that has for 1 year somehow dealt with delicate conflicts in Central Asia, in the Caucasus, in Ukraine. It's a great sense of pride. So this shows that Serbia has definitely improved and matured from my time, at least from the little I can see. And the news I received from people of the time that are still here from the time when I was are mixed. Some, of course, they're natural complaints, but I'm a natural optimist, and I try to always see the bottle half full. And for me, I see a brighter future. Okay,
thank you for that perspective. But you're also personally tied to Belgrade. You have met and married a beautiful Serbian girl here.
I see you are very well informed, your sources. Yes, of course. I mean, Serbia has been for me a very personal experience. I've met my wife, Ivana, who worked in the OSCE mission in 2006. We got married here. Our son is from Belgrade, so he was born here in 2008. And we come often to Serbia. We have family here, so it's a...
Tako da govorite i srpski pomalo.
Pomalo.
Pomalo. In July, you have been also elected on a new duty, which I congratulate you to.
Hvala puno.
This is a Secretary General of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. What are your main tasks going to be?
Thank you for the question. This is the biggest challenge ahead of me. I will take my duties on the 1st of January. My main task will be to contribute to what are the goals of the OSCE. The Parliamentary Assembly is a forum for dialogue between parliamentarians. Is also a forum where we contribute in giving and improving the democratic legitimacy of the organization. My task will be that of ensuring that the OSCE delivers concrete results on the ground and that the Parliamentary Assembly contributes with the rest of the OSCE family. This I take it from my work in the past in the field. I have had the privilege of seeing from ordinary citizens the benefits of the OSCE products. You know, they were beneficiaries in their small life of aspects of the OSCE work, and I have always that, you know, deep-rooted in myself. Also now that I have probably a more responsible position, I don't want to enter into a position, you know, a bit of embalsamated, they say, you know, and sit in a nice office up in Copenhagen. But I would like to really never forget that the main reason why we do this is to help people who have concrete issues on the ground, people who are in conflict in the field, and this should be our driving force.
Mr. Montella, thank you so much for this interview, and I wish you the best of luck in your next duty and for your traveling to Copenhagen.
Hvala puno. Sljedeći put to radimo na srpskom.
Sljedeći put radimo na srpskom, dogovoreno.
Hvala puno.
Poštovani gledalci, bio je ovo još jedno izdanje emisije Globus. Hvala vam na pažnji i prijatno večer do sljedeće srede.